Hey, yeah, so I have some really fucked up information regarding non binary. And, just wait until you hear what I found. If you missed this video that I made right here, professional researcher admits to being full of shit, you really should watch it because it basically proves that just because a person claims to be or is a professional doesn't actually mean they are. But also in this video, I briefly talked about non-binary and what it really is and what people think it is. For the purpose of this video, you'll need to know what that is. So I'll just reiterate what I said in the video. So basically, SJWs think that non-binary is just simply telling people, well, I'm not really a man or a woman, so I'm non-binary, right? And SJWs take that a step further to when it's actually damaging and say, people who identify as non-binary are automatically trans, and you should just change your body, scar it, and everything, even though you don't really have dysphoria or don't know if you have dysphoria, and then you'll later on regret transitioning, and that's why regret to transitioning is actually on the rise, and people who scarred their bodies and they can't take it back, and all this shit. But SJWs don't give a shit because they have no morals, right? So the problem with non-binary is that people simply identify as it without actually knowing if they have dysphoria, and are usually just pushed into it by like our awful generation, our awful educational system, SJWs, all this shit. You have disgusting parents indoctrinating their kids into believing they're trans just for fun. And you also have like all these educational professionals who teach your kids that it's a good thing and it's even fun. I remember I made that video on the Drag Queen Story Hour, and the teachers were making the kids just place body parts on a body for fun, and they really made it seem like a fucking game, which will it will psychologically fuck up these kids' minds into actually believing that this is nothing more than a fun game and you can do it because you want to, and not for any medical reason, because medication and science doesn't fucking matter. Who cares about that, right? As long as you're having fun and later scarring yourself. But they don't give a fuck about that either because, hey, you fell into what they wanted. Now you're all on your own. Regardless, non-binary is a real thing. It is. Just not in the way SJWs think it is. I told you what they think it is. Here's what it actually is. When a person has dysphoria, keyword has dysphoria, not just says they do or pretends they do, aka a trans trender. If you actually have dysphoria, but you're in that transitional period of trying to figure out if you really do belong in the body you were born with or if you belong in the opposite body, non-binary is that phase of not really knowing what you are, and you're trying to figure it out, and you're going through all this trauma, this mental trauma, and it's a very, very complicated time for real trans people. SJWs don't care about that or even know about it because they don't give a shit about hardships or even understand hardships. But when a person actually is trans and has dysphoria, it's a very difficult time for them when they're trying to figure it out. So during that time, they will basically say, I identify as neither because I'm non-binary for this time. But they eventually do make their transition or figure out that they didn't really want to transition at all. A couple other factors is that most non-binary people are, in fact, teenagers and female. This is a fact. Does that make it, less true? Yes and no. You can still be non-binary, technically, but it does prove that it's untrue in the sense that it's usually the younger girls who are more pushed into these kinds of influences, which can only heighten the fact that it's usually women, well, young girls, whatever, who get pushed into this or encouraged into it when they're trying to find their place in the world, all that stuff. So that's what non-binary is and what SJWs believe it is. So what is the actual point of this video? Well, it's something that we recently came across known as gender nullification. I assure you this is just as disgusting as you think it is. Dr. Davis is one of just a handful of North American surgeons. He's in California, by the way. I really probably didn't even need to say that. You could have guessed he was. Who have been performing gender confirmation surgeries for more than 20 years. However, not all gender patients desire a complete transition. That's kind of weird. I would think if you actually are trans and have dysphoria, you would want a full transition. It seems to me like a person who is a transgender. Don't get me wrong, I know that there are many trans people who don't fully go through with it. Like, even people like Blair White, for example, right? She kept her penis, and the reason she did that is because she's kind of afraid to go through with that part of the surgery. And I understand that. But that's a little bit different than what we're seeing here. For people who are actually trans and don't go through with the full thing, it could be a money issue, it could be fear, like I just said, but they still want to, they're just afraid to. But here, it seems like a person who's just simply undecided because they are not fully trans. They're, Anyway, for his gender non-conforming patients, so he doesn't offer surgery for trans people, he offers it for non-binary people. Dr. Davis also performs gender nullification, also known as male to eunuch or smoothie procedures. Basically, what he's trying to say is that he just flattens out the area. You might think, yeah, Matt, a vagina, that's flat. No, he means like there's nothing there, not even a vagina, which is kind of weird. And also, why is it only male to smooth? Isn't there gender nullification for women trying to become men? So I find it really weird that it's not mentioned here. I understand that he might do it, but if you are a surgeon or anyone in the medical field, you should probably mention it in your study. I find it kind of weird that only male to female, or apparently nothing, is the only thing mentioned in this article, but okay. The procedure includes a complete penectomy, that's removing the penis, orchiectomy, which is removing the testicles, a reduction of the scrotal sac, and shortening of the urethra. The goal is to leave the area as smooth, unbroken transition from the abdomen to the groin. Although an inconspicuous midline scar and shortened urethra will still be present, Dr. Davis does also offer the option of retaining the highly sedate distal penile tissue, which normally makes up the clitoris in a typical gender reassignment procedure, which he buries in the deep tissue of the lower mons above the urethra, akin to a hidden clitoris. So he makes you part of a vagina. This area does not affect the final smooth appearance of the area, but does offer significant extrasensory tissue to aid in orgasmic stimulation. Of course, this option is left entirely up to the desire of each patient. So, now if you're an SJW without a brain, you might look at this and go, this is great! Because your dysfunctioning brain will tell you, well, this is something that non-binary people can do until they figure out what they want to do. If they don't want a penis or a vagina, because they're neither, just smooth it out. And then once you figure out your traumas or whatever, then you complete the operation. The problem here is that that's not mentioned. This is not mentioned that it's for people who have dysphoria and are in their transitional phase. It says non-binary people. Non-binary encompasses people who have dysphoria, but it also encompasses people who don't and just say that they're neither because they simply feel that way or think that way or are pushed into it that way. I understand that people with dysphoria can still feel or be non-binary, but it doesn't say the word dysphoria in this article, and for a medical document, the word dysphoria should be in here because gender dysphoria is what makes a person trans. It's that fucking simple. The people who regret transitioning are the non-binaries who do not have dysphoria. Imagine a person who claims to be non-binary but doesn't have any issues with the dysphoria, goes and does this operation, and then changes their mind because, as I just said, they're not dysphoric, and you just did this operation for no reason. That's why this is disgusting. If a person is non-binary and actually has dysphoria, then this can actually be a great idea. I agree with that. But the fact that dysphoria isn't even mentioned, it's almost like it's not required anymore. Which pushes what I've been saying for a couple years now, that they just want anybody to change their body, whether if they're dysphoric or not. And that's damaging. Gender reassignment surgeries should only be for people who actually have a medical issue with gender dysphoria. And the fact that we've been pushing that anybody can do it, regardless of what kind of mental instabilities you may have, is just encouraging people to damage their bodies and quite literally do irreversible damage. That's why regret is on the rise. That's the fucking reason, okay? So, if you have dysphoria, this can be a good thing. But it's not for those people. It's for anybody who claims to be non-binary. And that's damaging. Like, objectively, factually damaging. What do you guys think?